Welcome back. Welcome back. It's your host, Delano, on the FanWire Podcast, your trusted voice for Washington Mystic content. You know, we always are bringing you something fresh and something good. So, we normally talk about the Washington Mystics, but this is about the whole WNBA for right now. And it's going to impact the Washington Mystics as well. So, we're here for it. All right, let's go. Now, when we talk about the CBA, we're talking about something that has captivated the fans. We're talking about something that has captivated the media, all of the talking heads on social media. That's what we've been talking about, especially today. So, today, again, we're going to talk about something that could literally change the WNBA forever. I mean, forever. Not just tweak it, not just improve it a little bit. I'm talking about the kind of changes that would impact players. It would impact WNBA players' salaries, free agency, roster depth, player rights, league growth, team building, and the long-term future for women's basketball all at once. Now, let's be real. You know, the next CBA is not just another labor agreement. Or actually, this CBA is not just a labor agreement. This is about the future. This is about whether the league is finally ready to operate like a major sports business that it keeps telling us it's becoming. Now, some people are on different sides of the fence with this one. Some people are saying, hey, the league is going in the right direction. The players just need to fall in line. And on the other side of the fence, you have a lot of people that are saying the women needs to go for what they feel they deserve. But I think that there's a healthy medium. It's a healthy point in the middle. So in this episode, we're breaking down the FanWire Podcast top 10 WNBA CBA changes that could change everything. I mean, everything. Let's get into it. Number one, I would say replace the hard cap with a much bigger cap plus a real revenue sharing system. Okay, so this is the biggest one. This is the one everybody's been arguing back and forth about. This is the game changer. Right now, the WNBA operates under a hard salary cap, and that hard cap limits everything. It limits how teams build. It limits how players get paid. It limits how contenders keep the core together. Or it also limits the league's ability to actually reward itself for its own growth. So that's what we have the super catch 22 right now. The current setup has always been way too small for where the league is actually headed. If I were rewriting the CBA, the first thing I would do is replace the hard cap system with a much bigger cap, plus a real revenue sharing system. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, that means a higher cap floor and cap ceiling, a guaranteed player share of basketball-related revenue, and automatic cap growth tied to the actual league revenue. What does all that mean? Okay, we'll go break it down some more. So pretty much the way that the players get paid, whether if you're on a super max, a max deal, a regular deal, rookie deal, whatever, all of that has to fit within inside the numbers that they call the salary cap. So we're saying that it needs to be an even higher salary cap than what is being projected right now. And we also say that the players need to have a guaranteed share of related revenue. So that could be ticket sales, jersey sales, mugs, t-shirts, whatever, everything. Now, is it realistic that it's going to happen? That's another question. But we're also saying that players should also get an automatic cap growth tied to the actual revenue increases that the league is going to see. Because we all know that the revenue is coming. It's just a matter of who gets the breakdown and what piece and what part. Now, again, is it realistic that they're going to get it on this one? That might be tough. That might be the point where the players might have to concede. They might get more by conceding that part for right now. But when I tie it all together at the end, you'll see why they may want to strategically let that piece go for right now. Because if you think big money is going on right now, it's even bigger money is being projected. But we'll talk about that soon. Okay, so again, if the league is growing, which it is, because you have billionaires on top of billionaires that want to get in on the party. They want to get in where they fit in so that they can make some money too. Even though the league is saying that they're not making any money, but they're selling teams for hundreds of millions of dollars to new groups that want to bring in and start their own WNBA team. Billionaires have money for a reason. They have billions for a reason. And it's not because they make bad or like really, really bad business decisions. So the league is growing. I don't care what anybody says. It's just a matter of how you put it on paper that defines it. But there's a lot of money being made. All right. So with that being said, the players should grow with the league. So if the league is making a lot more money, the players need to make a comparable wage based on that revenue. And all of the other agreements that they have coming as well. All right. So now stars should be paid like stars. Role players should be getting paid as well, but not underpaid. And teams should be able to keep their best players without destroying the rest of the roster. But these are all issues that you will have regarding the salary cap. Now, the change alone will pretty much alter the entire economic pie of the WNBA. All right, so number 2, expand the active roster. We've all saw last season how teams like Indiana pretty much had a whole new team or half of a new team playing at the end of the season due to players getting injured and they having to go into the hardship contract scenarios. So pretty much they had to get players off of the street just to compete, right? So by expanding the roster from 11 to 12 players to 13 to 14 players, that means that you'll have your current 12-day roster and you'll have at least 1 to 2 developmental slots for rookies that are coming in or players that are younger or players that you want to see develop. Now, currently on active rosters for each team, they can run at least at the minimum 11 players and they can get away with that. But I believe that you should have an active roster active day roster. Let me say that. The day roster, when you have an actual game, that game day roster should be 12 players every single time. And you have those 2 developmental slots. All right. Now, and the reason why I say that, this might be one of the most underrated issues in the league. The WNBA has way too much talent for rosters to be as small as they are. And every year, we see solid veterans, we see quality role players, and promising young prospects get cut year after year. And it's demoralizing to the fan bases. So, for example, Cheyenne Sellers was a top pick in the WNBA draft last year. And she got cut from the team, from Golden State. So if you had a developmental wing where you can develop talent, even if she didn't make the active game day roster, she could have made it, maybe not in Golden State, but I'm sure she could have made it on somebody's team. And that could have been developed. And that could have been a useful piece going forward. I'm just saying. Now, even though we've seen all these players that we have grown to like get cut, that doesn't always mean that they can't play. But it just means and a lot of times it just means it just was not enough spots for players. So that's a league problem. Even Juju Watkins, being such a young talent in NCAA during her sophomore year, said that she wouldn't really want to see a change in the age of where players can be allowed into the league so that younger players can get in before the league makes changes with the amount of roster spots that are available. Because that gives more players an opportunity to actually make the league. So, we know that Juju is going to make the league. I ain't worried about that. But she had the foresight to look out for the other younger players that are coming. So, again, this is a league problem. I believe that they're going to address it in this CBA, but we believe that is a core change that needs to occur. So, again, I would push for the minimum 13-player roster. Well, actually, let me say it this way. The minimum would be a 12 game day player roster with the optional opportunity to have the 13th and 14th roster spots for protected players. That could be, your rookies, younger players that you want to see develop, or additionally, players that are on. It could be, So that's it. That, but also, you also need to have an additional list, right, for players that need to be protected. And those are for players that have short-term absences. Could be pregnancy. It could be anything, right? Or I would say a select list of things, including players that are obligated or have commitments to play with their national team overseas. So, for example, you have FIBA basketball that's going to have a qualifying tournament that helps determine who will be going to play basketball in the Olympics. That's starting this week. So during parts of the season, there's another part where players have to leave and go represent their countries. So you have to have you have to have a protective buffer there so that players won't get cut, won't be, removed from rosters and things of that nature. So it matters. And it matters because, again, more roster spots mean more jobs, more development, more depth, more player security, and less wasted talent. There's way too many great ball players that are coming out of NCAA or coming from overseas that need an opportunity. And this helps with that opportunity. All right. There are too many players, again, that are good enough to be in the league, but they just get pushed out due to the math. And it's up to the league to make sure the math is right. All right. So that's another change. So let's talk about our third change. Create a real veteran exception and a mid-level exception. So we're talking about contracts. We're talking about the way teams can get players. So right now, once a team gets expenses, it becomes incredibly hard to keep building. So, for example, in the NBA, teams have tools, and in the WNBA, teams mostly have restrictions. So we're going to compare. It's not apples to apples, but it kind of is. But, that means a contender often has to choose between keeping a useful veteran, adding one more impact player, or maintaining the actual bench depth. And we're talking about the WNBA. So that's not actually the most healthy way that you can build your roster. It's not about the best healthy way to maintain your roster. So if the following are added, we're talking about the mid-level exception, we're talking about the veteran minimum exception, and re-sign your own player exception. And you were talking about something that's similar to the bird rights in the NBA. And if you don't know what that is, we're going to break down each one. All right. So with the mid-level, that means that if you've been in the league a certain amount of time, if your team needs to sign a player, they can go over the salary cap due to that exemption. So you have to be in the league for a certain amount of time, right? Now, when it comes to the veteran minimum exception, that means if you've been in the league and you're considered a well-established veteran, that pay is going to be different than the pay that a regular mid-level player is getting. So a veteran minimum needs to have a bump in there because they need to get paid for sticking in the league pretty much. And when we're talking about a re-sign your player exception, so we're talking about an instance where, let's say you have an A'ja Wilson, or let's say Caitlin Clark or Angel Reese, and they're coming up at the end of their deal, but you don't have enough salary cap room to retain their services. So if you don't have the room, that means they're automatically going to probably be going to a different team. But if there is an exception to re-sign these players and make it work financially, that means that, guess what? You'll still be able to keep your favorite player on your favorite team. Something to strongly consider. I think it works. Should it be some parameters around that? Definitely. But they can work all that out. All right. Now, why does it matter? Because, again, good teams that have these type of mechanisms in place, they can keep players that fit their culture, that keeps their fan bases engaged, and can potentially keep them as contenders and being competitive. And it reduces unnecessary roster shakeups. Even though as fans, and the talking heads, we love shakeups. when it comes to rosters and all of that good stuff. But for continuity, that might be a better way to do it. All right. So again, it allows your front offices to build smarter rosters instead of just cheaper ones. And we know some teams, they focus on being the cheaper ones. All right. Now, this is what we're going to do. We're going to also talk about number 4 on the list. We're going to talk about ending or dramatically softening or changing the rules regarding prioritization, right? So pretty much that means when a player is playing overseas or they have other commitments, it won't impact the team per se. Or I'm sorry, that player. Let me say it that way. It's about prioritization, So this has been one of the most controversial parts of the labor dispute for years. Because under the current structure, prioritization has created tension and is especially impacts players who play overseas. And let's be honest, the reason many players played overseas in the first place was because, guess what? They wasn't getting paid enough. The salaries in the WNBA were just too low. So the WNBA executive decided, hey, the best way to keep our players and get them into training camp on time is to punish them, unfortunately. So punishing those players, didn't really or hasn't and probably would never will sit right with the players. But this is what the FanWire Podcast would do. This is what your host, Delana, would do. I would just eliminate the hard penalties for late reporting for players that are not returning on time to the WNBA season. I will replace it with a negotiated reporting window. So pretty much we as a team can negotiate with a player, hey, we know you have these commitments, but we want you to return by X, Y, and Z and be ready to go. And allow limited exceptions for national team duties and existing overseas commitments. So pretty much, if you got other things to do, we understand. But I do see from a league's perspective, the league will be paying players a whole lot more. So guess what that means? Those players, I can see how they want players to be ready to go because that is going to decrease the instance where a player can get injured. It's going to decrease the instance where a player is not ready to go, or even y'all see how this world is going. You might get a player that's stuck in a country and can't get out. Hey, I'm just being real. So I can see how the league will want to limit the instances of where that can occur. But by paying players more, guess what? You change it anyway. But hey, again, by making the changes that we just recommended, that would change the league to being a more player-friendly, reduce friction with international stars, and better reflect the economic reality that players have had to navigate for years. So if the league wants to be global and elite, guess what? It has to stop treating players like their flexibility is a threat. Because at the end of the day, by bringing these players in, you're bringing more eyeballs to the game. And guess what that means? It's more opportunity to get paid through TV deals. But we're going to talk about that a little later. Make sure you stay tapped in. But in a second, though, do this for me. Like the video, like the video, like the video. Subscribe to the channel because we always dropping something good. And this is not going to be the only video today. We're actually going to be dropping another video a little later on regarding players, or a player, let me say that, a player that will be eligible to be drafted in the 2026 draft for the WNBA. And we're going to talk about her a little later. I'm not even going to drop the name yet. Y'all see it. Y'all get the notification. Make sure you tap back in, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications. All right, now let's get back to it. We're talking about number 5. We're talking about the guaranteed year. We're talking about the guaranteed year-round housing and travel standards in the CBA. Okay. This can be big to some people. And for some people, it's bigger than what they realize. Housing and travel are not a side issue. They are a quality of life issue. This is a professional standard issue. So if I'm rewriting the CBA, this is what I'm trying to negotiate into the contract. This is what I'm trying to lock in. Okay. Teams pay. Well, actually, let me say it like this first. What the players currently right now are saying, and then I'm going to double back and say what I think can work. Now, players are saying that teams need to continue paying for housing for all roster players, regardless of the contract. Remember, I said that. The league is saying, hey, we need to cut that out. That's an expense that we can drop. But there are really good reasons why the players should have some type of paid housing. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. Now, I believe that players that have been invited into camp, like training camp players, hardship players, and short-term contract players like 7 days, 10-day contracts, and players that have been traded to a new team should definitely have some level of paid housing by their team. And the reason why I say that, if you're in any market, you know where you live at. You know where you're watching us from. Is it easy to be able to get a short-term lease anywhere? No, it's not. So, especially if you might even be traded within 3 months, 2 months, a month. Most players that are on these type of housing arrangements, if they had to pay it themselves, they will have to most likely have a penalty for breaking the contract. That's just like anybody else. But if the team paid for it, or the team arranged it, it can be more favorable to all involved. All right, so when it comes to doing housing for the upper echelons of players, the high level contract players, we're talking about the players that are going to most likely have $1 million contracts. I personally don't believe that they should have the housing paid for. They're getting paid. They're getting paid quite well once this is all hammered out. I believe that they should be able to fit their own bill. But when it comes to, but also I will also say this, if a player is traded or cut, I believe if they have to break a lease, the team should fit that bill. That's the easy one. Now, let's talk about transportation. Let's talk about travel. Now, I believe that the women of the WNBA have definitely gotten to the point where their travel should be taken care of. You know, they're becoming more and more popular, and I believe that they should have private transportation, and that should reach whatever quality standards that they agree to. And I would also say that I believe that all WNBA players are awarded a vehicle. I remember somebody saying that. So I believe that maybe they need to get you know, maybe not necessarily a Mercedes-Benz truck, but maybe something a little bit cheaper for the players that are not on max contracts. Max contracts, they can get that Benz, but that can be something that you can work out. Getting vehicles that players can use, that can be worked out with some type of marketing arrangement with local car dealerships. I believe that that can be an easy workout, and it works for the team, it works for the players, and it works for local businesses. Now, that also can go back into the housing. You can work out some kind of arrangement with certain establishments that, hey, you can get X amount of marketing, signage, whatever can be agreed to, and the players get to live in these residences for free. Not saying that it's not the deal that they already have, and they're saying they're paying for it. I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of that. But I will say that's a way that it could be handled. Now, if you're wondering about living situations, I believe that it should be of a certain standard. You don't want people living in conditions that are deplorable, or conditions that doesn't meet being in a professional league. But I believe that all of these things can be managed and worked out. Now, you also have to consider you have some teams that are in super high housing markets, whether it's rental, purchasing, or whatever. So you're talking about your New Yorks, you're talking about your LAs, you can even say DC. Those markets, when it comes to housing, is high. So, if you have it, this can be another incentive point for teams. If your team offers to pay that, let's say they come to agreement where the league doesn't do it, but your team decides they want to, cool. That could be another selling point for your team. Don't make it optional. It can be that way. There's a lot of different ways to handle it, but the thing is, it just needs to be handled. All right, so now let's do this. We're going to talk about number 6. This is something that's near and dear to my heart, that plucks a nerve. It is the core designation. I believe that needs to be scrapped, thrown in the trash, and replaced with something a little bit better. So we're talking about a retention system that's a little bit fairer to the players. So if you don't know what the core designation is, if you watch NFL football and keep up with their players and contracts and things like that, they have something that's called oh man, it just slipped my mind. But a franchise tag, that's what it is. So pretty much when your contract is up, if you have value, the core designation and a franchise tag will give a team more of a right to keep you, even if you're ready to leave. So if you've already extended past your contract, the core designation pretty much says it helps teams, again, keep their stars. But from the player side, let's call it what it is. It acts like it's that franchise tag. And when that happens, free agency stops feeling free. So I would either heavily limit the core usage or just remove it entirely. I say remove it entirely, but let's just say as a negotiation here, everybody doesn't get their way. Let's say limit it and replace it with something better. It gives players an opportunity to stay with the team that they have success with. But the thing is, will that player want to be there? Because the way that the core designation works is you'll get a supermax contract for 1 year. That's how it's currently been going. But I would say you throw that in the trash. You don't allow players to have that. You don't allow teams to have that much control over the flexibility of a player. Because you can go from having a 4-year contract to having a 6-year contract by then you're out the league, or it's a good chance. So I believe that needs to be scrapped, thrown in the trash, definitely redone some way, somehow. Because that allow the stars and players to hit the market. Because that's another thing. That core designation is only going to hit the top of the top, the cream of the crop type of players. So it lets those players hit the market in a good window where they can maximize and either go to greener pastures or seek better opportunities. But that's how real free agency works. The NBA doesn't do that. The WNBA shouldn't either. It gives players more leverage, more accountability is put on the front office to do things the right way by their players. And it gives more movement in the offseason. So it gives me more to talk about. I love it. And you'll love it too, because it'll make you more invested and more in tune to what's going on with the WNBA. And of course, you know what that means? More drama. And again, more interested fans. And that's always good for the league. As long as somebody's talking about the league, it's always good. Now, let's talk about number 7. I would say this. I would say extend the season, the date that it ends, further into the calendar year. And the reason why I say that is it builds into the season opportunities for rest and recovery days for the players. Right? Now, I'm not saying add more games. I'm just saying spread out the games a little bit more. And this matters both to the product and the player's health. If the league is growing, which it is, the season structure has to evolve with it. And I don't want longer seasons. When it comes to additional games at this point, unless the players are going to get paid for those additional games. But again, this allows for more spacing between games. It builds in rest and recovery days and windows. It allows for smarter travel flow, because you might have a team flying from California to DC to play a game and have to fly right back out to Dallas or something like that. And you won't have a window to travel. So pretty much you're flying and then you're playing. And this also gives teams an opportunity to practice. Most of these teams don't even have opportunities to practice. It gives teams an opportunity to get better, fix issues, and to be innovative and do more and better things. So it's key to have a more sustainable calendar for the players. And why does that matter? Because when the schedule is too compressed, the quality of play suffers. health suffers, and long-term player performance suffers. So pretty much you'll have more of an instance and an opportunity for you to have a team in a predicament like the Indiana Fever last year, when you have half of your team on hardship contracts. The league is getting bigger, and the calendar needs to be modernized to reflect the growth of the league. All right, so you can't keep asking players to give without providing a better structure for them to operate in. Remember that. Think about it. Now, Summer Breeze 6250. I appreciate you for tuning in. You said that, let's see here, WNBA players don't make a lot of money regarding housing. It depends on the area that they're living in. The cost of rent or own is outrageous in the DMV. I agree. If you don't know, the DMV is DC, Maryland, and Virginia. So if you have players coming into this market, prices are escalated and elevated. Believe that. All right. Now, number 8. We're talking about a true developmental system. We kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. This is one of the most important long-term fixes that the league could make. The WNBA still doesn't have a true NBA-style development system. For example, the G League, or a league where you have players constantly playing and being developed, but that's another fix for future CBA negotiations. But what this will do, this will fix a huge problem, especially since expansion is definitely underway. The league is growing from 12 teams to 15 teams by 2026. Right? So pretty much you had Golden State come online last year, and then this year you have the Portland Fire and you have the Toronto Tempo. So that's 3 new teams coming into the league starting this season. Well, actually, 2 more teams starting the season added to the one. All right. So that means there's more talent that needs to be available. More depth will be needed as well. And more player development, of course, will be needed. So this is what I recommend. I would recommend that the WNBA creates a league-run developmental system that could be affiliated with the actual team, or with some of these new developmental leagues that are coming online. For example, you have leagues of semi-pro basketball that you can assign these players to, so that they can still get run and get developed, get that burn, stay ready. Something to consider. Because you have these, I'm not talking about leagues like Unraveled. I'm not talking about leagues like Project B or anything like that. I'm talking about your local semi-pro leagues. So there are a lot of teams or a lot of states that have semi-pro basketball leagues. So, for example, you have, let me get it up here. Give me a second here. One quick moment. Because in Virginia, there is a semi-pro basketball team. And I want to make sure I give you the accurate information here. So, for example, you have the Virginia Vitsies. But anyway, this is a Loudoun County premier semi-pro professional basketball team, right? So you can assign players, your local players, to some of these teams so that they can get run, they can get burned. And you have team execs that will be able to get their eyes on new talent that might need to be put into the pipeline of the WNBA or to consider. Now, adding this type of system, and again, this might not be a system that can be fully implemented right now, but I believe in time it can be critical. You know, so this will afford teams to have extra right retention slots for prospects. It can allow pathways for injury rehab. So, for example, when you have players like Georgia Amore for the Washington Mystics that had an ACL injury, this gives her a pathway to come back and to have actual game reps to get her ready for the grind of the WNBA season. I think it would be beneficial. And it offers a true two-way style of development opportunities where you can have a player in one of these semi-pro leagues or a pro league that needs to be developed. You know, there's many different ways to look at it. They can be pulled from that team and then brought up to play at the WNBA level when needed. Because right now teams draft players, and too often, again, they cut players that can actually be developed and help the team when needed. So if they continue to go down the path without this as some type of system for development, that's bad for talent growth. That's bad for roster continuity. That's bad for the future of the league. A real developmental system would change everything. I mean, everything. Now, we're almost to the end. Talk about number 9. Raise the minimum salaries. And we're not just talking about max salaries. When we talk about raising them a lot. They talk about raising them because currently, the offer from the WNBA, the league, to the players is giving them a 500, I believe it's a 500% increase on their current salaries. So what does that mean? That means that these players are getting paid really low. And a lot of money has come in. I mean, a lot of money has come in. And has given an opportunity for these contracts to increase dramatically. I know that anybody that doesn't play in a professional sport, if your job said, hey, we'll give you a 500% increase, you'll take it without a doubt. But when you are part of the actual structure of how this thing works, the way that a player is, you know, it's a different type of conversation that needs to occur when it comes to increasing salaries. Let's be real. Now, let's also say this as well. You know, again, most of the CBA conversations focus, and especially the stuff that we see on the media, the stuff that we see on the talking heads regarding the WNBA, the conversations are related to how much money that the superstar players are going to get. Those super max contracts, those max contracts. And yes, they definitely deserve their pay bump. Believe that. But if you want change to impact the league, you can't just fix the top. You have to fix the middle, and you have to fix the bottom too. The minimum matters. Because when the minimum salaries are too low, players are then forced to make impossible choices. And guess what that means? That means chasing money overseas. That means dealing with uncertainty just in life. And then they carry the burden of growing the league without getting paid by the league. That ain't good. That just ain't good. So I would push for this. rookies that are currently in rookie contracts will get an immediate bump to match the percentage of the increase that's going across the league. So if a player, let's say it's on the Supermax contract, is pretty much going to end up getting like a 500% increase, that rookie contract needs to be increased by 500% too. And I'm talking about your Caitlin Clarks, your Paige Buckers. We're talking about your Kiki Irfan, Sonia Citrons, all of these players that are currently on rookie deals. And there needs to be a bump for veteran minimums as well. They are the glue that holds this thing together. The veteran minimums. There needs to get that same type of treatment, that same kind of bump. And in these contracts, there needs to be more guaranteed money. Okay? And based on revenue, as this increases, that means that there needs to be automatic annual raises for these contracts based on the amount of revenue that's coming in. Okay. I'm passionate about this. Okay? Because this will strengthen the league's middle class. It reduces dependency on having to make extra income overseas. And it makes life less punishing for non-stars. Right? So let's be clear. A healthy league is not just one where the stars get rich. It's one where the role players can get a bump and survive too and live comfortably. Now, this is going to be the big one, number 10, because this is something that I don't think most people are looking at. The league, from my understanding, is offering an 8-year contract to the players, right? And it's very important that for the league side that they're saying, hey, let's do 8 years. It's not without a specific reason. From my perspective, if I were the players, I would say, hey, we need to do a 6-year deal, right? And it's a specific reason why I'm saying 6. Because this is a sneaky one. This is an important one. Because timing matters. It matters. Okay, so let's talk about it and why it matters. We know that, there are people that are aware that the WNBA pretty much just did a TV rights deal a few years ago, or maybe like a year ago. And they were able to secure $60 million television deal. That's how a lot of this new money is available, right? So that 6-year, that deal is an 80%. Let's okay, before we get to that deal is subject to run out in 2034. Okay. And if the CBA, if they do 8 years, is 2034. But the catch is this is the sneaky part by the league. The next major TV rights deal is coming up in 2029. Some of y'all caught it. Some of y'all caught it. Some of y'all didn't. So I'm going to break it down. Since it's 2029, they get to restructure the deal. Do you know what they're projecting the new deal to be? It's going to blow your mind. You're going to say, what the? You might cuss. They're projecting that the new the new television rights deal will balloon 85%. Well, actually, it'll balloon dramatically to $300 million. Wow. That's an 85%. Or we'll say this. It'll give the league an opportunity for an 85% increase on revenue. So, what does that mean and how does it factor into the CBA agreement? Because that 60 million was a lot of money. But 300 million is a lot, is a whole lot of money. So by the CBA being structured for 8 years, that's going to give the WNBA as a league an opportunity to get 5 years of revenue that they will not have to split with the players. They get that window. Because even though a new TV rights deal gets restructured and that money comes in immediately, pretty much, the players will still be under the old CBA getting whatever percentage that they agree to. So guess what? The league is going to be caking it. They go be getting money on fist over fist on top of that's a whole lot of money. So I can see why the women are saying, hey, we know what we want. We're not going to budge until we get what we want. And I see why. Because they know what's coming in the future. This is stuff that's just not talked about. I think that if this was talked about, I think if the players would have put this out in the atmosphere, fans would have greatly understood. Because it's a lot of money. A whole lot of money. So again, if you lock a player or the players into the wrong deal for too long, and the league explodes in value, like was being projected, the players are stuck in an outdated agreement. And I see why the players saying, hey, that cannot happen. So instead of an 8-year CBA, that collective bargaining agreement needs to be 6. Because after the 5th year, that can be negotiated. Those numbers can be implemented. You can know what your numbers are, and then you can renegotiate based on those terms. And another thing that the players probably should do, line up their free agency like they did this year and use it as a negotiating ploy again. Because it's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. That's a massive increase in revenue. It balloons. And the league is just sitting there waiting to collect. And the players need to get a fair shot at that new money that's coming again. Because when it's time to renegotiate, those moments are going to be critical. Or otherwise, the league pockets a major growth while the players stay underpaid. And that's the kind of setup that makes everybody say the same thing. Talk about getting underpaid. Hey, sheesh. It's rough out here. This is real business. I can see why it's going down to the stretch. Because neither side wants to bend. Neither side wants to concede. But I believe that it's ways to skin the cat. I believe that there are ways to get this going again. But we're going to have to see how it goes because, hey, this is CBA watch. This is as the CBA turns because this is literally a soap opera. So hopefully, we'll be able to get some good news because the deadline technically has passed. The deadline was today, this morning, and the deal has not been reached. So let me do this. Let me just double back and make sure, because I want to make sure I'm giving you current information. Let's see if I have an update for you. No, the deadline's been passed. They're still swapping back and forth. They're still trying to figure it out. But I gave some ways to make it work. I gave some ways that I hope that the WNBA Players Association is looking at this. And I hope that there are ways that the league is looking at it too, so that they can come to the middle and we can have a WNBA season that we want to see. All right, folks. This has been a good long one. I ain't expect to be on here this long, but when change is around the corner on the other side of the mountain, it impacts everything. It's a package deal. It got to be figured out. So again, if you narrow down the list to the most important items, the stuff that needs to be handled right here, right now, we're talking about a super increase in the salary cap with some real revenue sharing, increase the rosters, get rid of that core designation because that just handicaps free agency. And built in some exceptions to make sure that a developmental league can be established, get that system right, and get this TV contract more lined up so that you can make that bread, ladies, for real. So then again, it needs to be a combination of things that needs to change because it impacts everything, literally. How stars get paid, how many players stay in the league, how much freedom players have to actually move to different opportunities, and how quickly teams can build or keep contenders alive. It's not a small shift. It's a huge one. But sometimes you need a complete league reset to make things right. So we'll see what happens. It's a lot that needs to go down. It's going to be a lot of arguments today. A lot of people saying, hey, we're giving too much. And that's on both sides, whether it's the league or the players. But you got to meet in the middle somewhere because you got to get everybody paid so everybody can play. And guess what? If they pay more and they play more, they get more. There's more opportunities for everybody to eat. Just don't be greedy. So again, let me know this in the comments. Which part of the CBA matters most to you? Would it be the salary cap, expanding the rosters, ending or changing the course designations, raising the minimum contracts, building a real developmental system, or just preparing for the future when it comes to these future contracts? Let me know. Let me know. Drop your thoughts in the comments because this is a big conversation because it impacts the entire future of the entire league, the whole WNBA. So again, if you enjoyed the breakdown, like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notification bells so that you don't miss another WNBA analysis brought to you by the FanWire Podcast. Yeah. If you want more WNBA free agency, salary cap strategies, expansions, draft or team information, let me know. Put it in the comments. And, we'll be right back at you real soon because we got another video to drop. Because we got some prospects to review when it comes to players that will be eligible for the 2026 WNBA draft. Yeah. Let's get ready. This is your host, Delano, your trusted voice for Washington Mystic content and just WNBA content, period. We out here. We're bringing it to you. Giving you a different twist, a different look. Catch y'all in a few. I'm out of here. Gone.